أعزائنا الحضور، أهلا وسهلا بكم من جديد. نستكمل جلساتنا مع الجلسة الخامسة.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome all after break, and I would like to introduce our first speaker in the second session, who is Dr. Riyad Al-Sahali. He's consultant internal medicine, nephrology and transplantation, director and postgraduate medical education. He's the vice president of Saudi Scientific Board of Internal Medicine, chairman of local training committee of internal medicine in Saudi Council for Health Specialties. He's the chairman of Internal Medicine Subcommittee and SMLE Central Committees at Saudi Commission for Health Specialties. Welcome, Dr. Riyad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Shukran jazeelan. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the organizers of this long-awaited forum for the invitation. I was given this topic, and I found it very fulfilling because it's program director is among all the positions that I've been through over the last few years. Being a program director to me was the most rewarding, and it was just an exceptionally nice experience. So that didn't all start off nice and beautiful. I remember on my first day of work after I came back from abroad, the chairman of the department, Dr. Mohammed Al-Ghanim, I don't know if he's here, asked me to come to his office, and he was breaking a lot of bad news. One of them, that he was asking me to take over the internal medicine residency program. So one of my first questions at that point, I had no idea what residency program is all about, and it was a very terrifying feeling. So my first reaction was, what does residency program director actually mean? I don't know the culture, I don't know the hospital, I don't know the trainees, I don't even know what the relationship between the program and the Saudi Commission. So a lot of unanswered questions. So can I go back? Okay. So the objectives of this session is to go through the description of program director. What is the job of a program director actually? What a program director actually needs, and some of the common challenges and some of the priorities for program directors to set up as a priority, top priority. And then we'll talk briefly about the relationship between the institutional academic affairs or postgrad in some institutions and the regional committees at the Saudi Commission. Okay, bismillah. Okay, so that was the first question that I had in mind almost 5 years ago. I prefer these sessions to be like a small group discussion on round tables, لكن because of the setting that we have and because of the time, I'll just go through what I have learned in the last 5 years, what a program director actually supposed to do. So just bear with me, this seems to be a little slow. Okay. طيب. So اوكي. بس هو هذا صح؟ This one. Okay. طيب. عذرا على الخلل. So a program director is a person who's expected to do a lot more than what a regular physician would actually do. There are clinical responsibilities, there are academic responsibilities. He's expected to be a manager, he's expected to be an advisor to all those residents who come to you and broke into tears. He's an advocate for his residents, and he should always advocate for their overall well-being in addition to their excellence in education. As a counselor, the residents and trainees will come to you with all their problems. Some of these problems are very confidential or very private, but they feel that you're closer than anyone else in this institution. They will come to you and they will open up and talk about what they need to talk about, especially if that problem or that particular problem is actually affecting their academic performance. Program directors are expected to have an engraved communication skills, because believe it or not, in most cases, your communication skills can actually get you through difficult obstacles. Okay, so if you want to okay, finally. So, do we all know what this is? What do you call this? Does it look familiar to anyone? Yeah, so this is the Camid's flower, and right in the middle is the medical expert domain. But all other domains, all other intrinsic domains are actually essential to be in the structure of that person who's going to run a residency program. Professional, communicator, collaborator, leader, health advocate, and scholar, and some of high clinical knowledge would definitely add to that whole package. Okay, so that was just in summary what a program director is expected to do, or what are the features that a program director needs to have in order to run a residency or a fellowship program. Comes with the job of a program director a lot of responsibilities. Some of these responsibilities, I divided them up into responsibilities toward the program, responsibilities toward the postgraduate medical education department, and responsibilities towards your academic program, the program that the department that actually owns or governs the training program. Good, seems to be clicking in now. All right, so the responsibilities of program director towards his program is one of the essential responsibilities is to establish a curriculum plan or an educational plan for your program. Okay, I think one of my colleagues will talk about the residency program committee in more details, but it's one of the main responsibilities of the program director is to set up a residency program committee, and he's the one who's going to chair it. Okay. Monitoring of trainees, identifying trainees in difficulty. I'll just try to, okay, good. So these are responsibilities that are expected from a program director towards his own program. So developing the educational curriculum, chairing and setting up an efficient committee to help you run the program. You have to monitor these trainees, monitor their evaluations, pick up their failure, pick up those who are in difficulty, counsel them on their career on the go, and that's usually conducted through their regular meetings with the program director. If you can prepare them for their end of year exam or certification exams, that would be great. And you have to meet with these residents regularly, and you have to document those meetings. It's called like a progress meeting that you can conduct once a year or once every 6 months, depending on the size of your program. But these meetings are very useful. You get to know your residents at a closer level, and you start learning a lot more about your trainees and what their specialty preferences are, for example, any other areas of interest, either clinical or non-clinical, leadership interest, all these things. Okay, again, among the responsibilities towards the program director and the residency program committee are the ones who are going to select the new trainees, so select them wisely. You have to be available either by phone, by email, and you have to reply within maybe 24, 48 hours to your trainees. Keep records. Keeping records is one of the areas that we look at when we're reviewing an A program. And this is usually an area that has some deficiency in it, that we talk to people, we talk to residents, we counsel them, but we don't document that. We don't keep records of these meetings. We might conduct an RPC meeting, but we don't keep valid minutes to prove that that meeting has actually been conducted. Know your postgraduate policies, the institutional policies that you're working at, and try to implement them. Maintain the standards for the Saudi Commission accreditation, and that's another critical area for the validity and the maintenance of the program. And in some places, you might be able to develop a system to evaluate the faculty or the trainers in your institution. I apologize, this is very slow. هل في طريقة تسوونها من عندكم؟ And this is not working. طيب. All right. So those were the responsibilities of the program director towards his own or her own program. There are some other responsibilities towards the academic department. Always try to get the department chairman on your side. This will facilitate a lot of the logistic obstacles. It will facilitate your communication with your faculty or consultants, and hopefully will help you avoid a lot of the struggle that you might face with consultants or faculty when it comes to the balance between clinical service and education. Communicate any relevant information to the department chairman or the department members, those information that are relevant to residents and their clinical assignments, and engage faculty or consultants in the program. Give them some assignment, ask them to participate in lectures or provide some bedside teaching or some exam preparation sessions. Once you make people involved, they will feel the ownership of this program. They will see and sense your enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of your trainees, and they will be able to deliver more help. Attend the department meeting, and I'm sure most departments would meet regularly. And if there are some high-profile issues related to your residents, bring them up, bring them forward, and discuss them. That gives validity to your decisions and actions. Okay, and now we have the responsibilities towards the academic affairs and the postgraduate medical education office. As a program director, the postgraduate office or the academic affairs is your department of reference. You belong to that. You belong to that department. So if they conduct monthly meetings, then you're expected to attend those meetings and implement your local institutional policies and bring forward issues related to your residents to the academic affair boards, or whatever you call it, postgraduate board meetings. And if there is a chance, or if your institution is adopting some form of internal review process, participate in those internal reviews. Be a reviewer of another program in your institution. Just refine your skills, and it helps you identify defects and weaknesses in your own program. Okay. Now, so those were the responsibilities of a program director towards his program, his own department, and the postgraduate office. The relationship with the Saudi Commission is also not very different from those. So being a program director gives you a direct membership to the regional supervising committee. So that's one thing. And it gives you membership to the scientific committees for some specialties. Those committees will meet regularly, so that gives you a chance to meet other program directors in your area. It gives you the chance to exchange experience with them. It gives you a chance to collaborate with them at different levels, professional levels, academic levels, which makes the training in that region a lot easier and more harmonized. In those committees, you're always expected at the end of the year, usually around September, to submit your annual promotion report. Okay, so that's what the program director is expected to do, and those are the usual responsibilities. But also program directors have some needs. They need something to make them comfortable and to make them productive. One of the things that I always insist on is just a simple office. You'll be surprised when you go around the programs that program directors, some of them, do not have their own office to run the program from. So a separate office, I think, is mandatory, it's essential, and I wish it becomes a part of accreditation for any program, whether small or large. The program director also needs administrative assistant, needs secretarial support, and based on the size of the program, you might need one, you might need two, or sometimes you might need three. But generally, 1 to 2 would at least be the minimum. Otherwise, your job will be complex, will be tiring, and you might get burned out very easily. And whenever possible, and if there is someone that you actually not just like, but you trust, and that person has the skills and has the ability, and before anything has the passion to help in the program, or can be a potential program director in the future, have these people on your side. They can serve as deputy program directors, or you can call it associate program directors, and give them some assignment into the program. Either they can take care of, for example, their educational curriculum, or they can take care of your assessment methods. They can do some quality assessment on your program. But these people, try to find them, catch them, bring them closer. They will help you a lot, and whenever you decide to step down, then there is a second man in line who's ready, who's experienced, so the program doesn't go through ups and downs with changing program directors. Okay, so all these responsibilities, and I'm sure they come with their own challenges. One of the challenges that I have is this, to be honest, but let's see how it works. Okay. All right. Okay. So one of the common challenges, we're talking about our own program directors هنا في المملكة, either in the central region, western region, you name it. Some programs do not have an admin assistant. There is no secretarial support. And that's always a challenge. It's always painful. It's always exhausting to look after residents and send them emails, and they email you back, and you have their con schedule, they have your clinics, and it's just endless. So admin support, I think, is essential, and I would recommend to the accreditors here to include this in their accreditation checklist. Inadequate knowledge of Saudi Commission policies and regulations. And this is also something that is evident, it is there, but it can be easily fixed. You can just download the policy and regulations for postgraduate programs from the website of the Saudi Commission, and please read them, go through them. We have faced problems with program directors who did not know the regulations very well, so that led to, I would say, inappropriate decisions, especially when it comes to disciplinary actions, and those actions were not going to be executed at any higher level because they were made wrongly in the first place. So read the manual, know the regulations and the policies. It will help you a lot. Okay, I have 2 more slides, that's it. One of the challenges, the common challenges, is the uncooperative chairman or uncooperative consultant, intrusive chairman or department members. And this is also part of our culture, that someone thinks that he's the boss, so he would try to get himself into the ins and outs of the program or the operational part of the program. So that's a real challenge, and it's looked at in the accreditation checklist. The overwhelming operational work is also another obstacle, and it's another challenge, and it's usually created by the lack of admin support or lack of manpower. Okay, so they flipped the slide, so they want me to finish really quick. So the priorities, please set a time, create a time, speak to your postgrad, speak to your chairman, and set a time, maybe 1/2 day a week, maybe 2 half days a week, where you're freed from any clinical services just to look at your program and take care of it. Take care of the program. I call it backbone first. The backbone of your program is your rotation schedule, master schedule, call schedules, and evaluations. If you miss these, if these go loose, you're in trouble. Get help whenever you need help, either from your colleagues or from your chief residents. Find that treasure in your program. Each program has a treasure. The treasure is a chief resident. If you find one good chief resident, that will make your life a lot easier. They're part of the trainee, they're trainee, so they know their colleagues very well. They know the ins and outs of the program probably much better than you do, and they can facilitate a lot of issues, and they can resolve a lot of problems before even it reaches your desk. Okay, and just give these chief residents some executive power and sit back and enjoy their leadership. Okay, did you just flip it back? Okay, طيب. And please, one of the priorities المهمة جدا is to document everything. Document the progress of a resident, document a failure of a resident, document a discussion or a meeting or a counseling session with a resident. All these documentations are very, very important. You need them, maybe not now, but maybe a year or 2 down the road. When something happens, you just go back to your records and retrieve all the information that you've documented. And run your training committee efficiently. That will make your life a lot easier, and be available. Okay. Oops, sorry. Just before, thank you. Can you go back? Can we go back to the slide قبل الأخير, please? أيوة. شكرا. Okay, so just in conclusion, the program director job is challenging. We all know that. Lakin, believe me, it is very rewarding. There is nothing better than being part of someone else's professional growth. It is priceless. It is very fulfilling when you select a resident from med school, and 4 or 5 years down the road, they graduate, they reach that level of clinical competence where they can actually question your own clinical decisions. That's just priceless. And you guys, or program directors, are the cornerstones in this whole educational system, postgraduate educational systems. Program directors are critical, and they're the cornerstones, and to me, they're the deal makers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
شكرا للدكتور رياض السهلي، وندعو رؤساء الجلسة لمناقشة الجلسة.
So shall we take the question first? And then we'll move to the next speaker. So if there is any question for the speaker, please go ahead. Hi.
Thank you, Dr. Riyadh, for this very excellent talk. It's very needed for any newly appointed program director, like in my situation.
I can't hear you, Allah Sama.
If you stand up, if you don't mind.
My inquiry in programs that have, let's say, 10 candidates or less, usually they don't find an administrative support or secretarial support. Is it fine if I, in your opinion, to allocate some of the residents to do this part in like documentation, in writing a memo or agenda of a meetings, or is it like unethical to do that?
So if I heard your question correctly, Osama, so you're saying if you don't have admin assistants, can you ask residents to do their job? Exactly. Is that your question? Yes. Wallahi, you can ask your resident to make you a cup of tea, and if he's okay with it, then he's okay with it. I don't think it's because this might be overwhelming, Osama. For them, and it's just beyond the scope of their residency training, because it's totally different from, let's say, the chief resident role. The chief resident role, it's more of leadership, guidance. They organize. You know, there is some paperwork involved, but it's usually at the level of clinical service assignment and call schedules and stuff like that. But helping you in the day-to-day communication, I don't think it's ideal.
Any other question?
I think this is a very important point. It raises the question of what is the role of the Saudi Commission, the accreditation function at the Saudi Commission in ensuring that this happens. Our position is that there shouldn't be a program that is at this stage where they look at the need for administrative support and even thinking of the residents doing that function. And this probably calls for an important necessity right now is to make sure that we enforce the requirements for accrediting those centers to be training centers to start with. We recognize the importance of making sure that we work with all training institutions to remind them of this important function. I don't think it's the institutions that they are resistant to it. I think with a lot of communication and enforcing and reminding them of what they signed up for when they get accredited, this will support at least some of those institutions. So it really shouldn't be the program director's responsibility or the resident or the trainee. I think we recognize that also as a Saudi Commission function, that we need to re-emphasize the institutional accreditation requirements and make sure that centers are adherent to it. I think it's a commitment. If I believe that I'm qualified enough to be a training institution, one of the basic requirements is that enough support is provided. And if we go to the documentation, that's what it says, but it's an issue of implementation from both sides, the Saudi Commission and the institutions.
So if there is no question, we'll move to the, thank you so much, Doctor.
انتهت الجلسة الخامسة. أما الآن مع الجلسة السادسة مع الدكتور سعود الشنيفي، فليتفضل مشكورا.
So it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, who is Dr. Saud Shnefi, who is in fact a friend of mine for a long time. So he is a consultant in pediatric surgery at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center, who is known to the academic and training affairs for more than a decade. And actually, he has very rich experience in this field. He is the Deputy Executive Director for ATA at King Faisal since 2011. And he is very ambitious, and he has an MBA and other related academic qualification for postgraduate training affairs. So I think we will listen to a very rich presentation from Dr. Saud. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Is the sound okay in the back? Because I was having difficulties hearing my colleagues when I was in the front. Anyways, I think presentations in the afternoon have many challenges. One of them is the lunch, of course. Everybody now probably is half asleep. And hopefully, after the first presentation, now you are more awake. The second one that pertaining to this presentation specifically is the fact that we debated a lot, I and the organization committee, which I thank for giving me the chance to be here, about its contents. Because if you look at the program, especially last week when the program came out, there has to be something with a flavor, and this one different than the one in the morning, especially the one presented by our international speaker, Dr. Susan. So we agreed to put it with a local national flavor, and hopefully that will ignite some discussions from what we know. The other challenges that we all will face as speakers, because we come from different cultures. I come from King Faisal, where people are viewing it as resources full, and they don't have any challenges. And people who are listening to this presentation may even judge the speaker based on that. I can assure you that this presentation was made with a broader, objective look. I have many experiences with a lot of centers. I've interacted with many colleagues regarding the accreditation in general and its effect on the output of our programs. So these are the goals that are put in the for the talk itself, and you can see it. They are really commercial to describe the purpose of these individual standards. They identify the area cited as commonly occurring weaknesses in it, and also to develop an approach to identify the address. If we are going to follow this, we will need like 3-4 hours to talk about each one of them and how to critique it. But I'm just going to go hash on those, and I'm going to talk about how can we learn from our own national experience in it. Now, the presentation will briefly discuss the process of accreditation of the training, institutional and programs, and we'll also talk about the standards and discuss it, as I said, in the context of our current status. So training center is the training center here is a sponsoring institution and where the training will take place, and its accredited programs function under its authority. Must comply with the accrediting body's requirements, which is the Saudi Commission in this country, and its policies and procedures. Loss of institutional accreditation will result in loss of programs accreditation, and patient safety and healthcare quality are at the core of the process. Now, the nature of the institution will impact the training significantly. I come from a tertiary healthcare center, and that's a challenge for us. Because whenever we propose our programs, we shouldn't be just concentrating on the type of patients that we have. So we insist on our program directors to recognize these weaknesses and get enough rotations for our trainees outside the institution in order to ensure that we go by whatever is in the syllabus of those programs. And that's very important. And it's vice versa also for programs that come from secondary and primary healthcare centers. Okay, now what are the commitments in the institution itself? It's to maintain accreditation of patient care. And in Saudi Arabia, you know, the Sibahi, a lot of hospitals, they got the GCIA, the international one. But who monitors really this commitment? Like if a hospital like King Faisal tomorrow loses the accreditation, the JCIA or Sibahi, who's really taking care of that? You will think that the Saudi Commission, every time they come for the accreditation, they will tick that part. But this we all know, it comes program per se, and every 4 years or so. And sometimes even some programs, they expire, and it takes time before they get them into the queue in order to go for an accreditation. I think this is very, very important because hospitals could lose the focus with time, and they become, you know, not suitable for trainees for training and to give them the objectives of the training. Now, the financial support for admin and educational and clinical resources. This was also talked about by my colleague just now. But what is acceptable? I don't think there is any amount of, you know, or anything quantitative to tell the centers what's enough. At King Faisal last month, one of the chairmen went to the administration asking for a secretary for the training because he was complaining that the number of the secretaries in his system were put by the medical affairs, and it's not up to the hospital to ask him to recruit them in trainees. That's in King Faisal we're talking here. So if you talk about other centers, you can even imagine other scenarios. So we don't really know. We try our best in academic affairs to talk to our program directors to get enough help. Alhamdulillah, we have it. But as I said, there isn't really any limit for it. So we don't know. Is one is enough? Half a secretary is enough? Nobody really knows. And program directors know exactly how much help they need. Sometimes even they compromise. Sometimes even they ask trainees to do this job. And it has to be periodically reviewed. Now, what is the timeline for that? Because periodically, it doesn't mean the Saudi Commission doing for us. It has to be an internal review. Who should do it? It is mentioned in the guidelines of the ACGME and the Canadian and the Saudi one. It has to be done annually. Who's monitoring that? These are issues that we really have to address as we go. Academic affairs or whoever is running the training has to make sure that at least part of the review has to be done under their vision in order to make sure that it is efficient and done properly. Now, training sites, if you have either it's your hospital or other sites, they have to be adequate in clinical services, accredited by the local or international body. Supervision is very, very important. We notice in some programs that residents are not really well supervised by the consultants. The program director is doing his best in putting them in nice rotations, talking about evaluations, but the exact supervision is very, very important. At King Faisal, we're trying to come up with new innovative ways to have a back reporting from the residents themselves to not to admit that they're not supervised, but to say that our needs are not met. There has to be, to foster intra-professional relationship, teamwork building, and to have an accurate and complete medical records. Now, this is too much to maintain, to be honest. If you really think of it from leadership position, you cannot go yourself from academic affairs and try to poke on departments and make sure that they are meeting these things. If you go by KPIs, you will have difficulty collecting the data. We have a medical education project that we started 2 years ago, trying to collect one information. How much our consultants are involved in teaching. And we put a limit from our institution. We put 4 bedside sessions and 4 didactic sessions. And we left it to the program director and the department to define it the way they want. So for surgical discipline, that they can define the didactic session the way they want. If it's rounds, if it is a session in a lecture, it's up to them. We are having difficulties collecting these data. We are only having now 9 departments or 9 programs they reported back. The rest are still struggling with the data. We haven't even been yet to the stage of validation. We are only collecting the data. Now, the governing body, it's an entity to maintain the authority, and this is where the academic affair or the postgrad department is in that position. And there are a lot of challenges at that department. Sometimes the weight of that department is more of a section from the hospital rather than an academic part. And this is very, very important for the academic affairs officials to sense their role as trainers, as academics, rather than just to finish a job and to give a report at the end of the year. Now, designated institution official, that's the executive director or whoever is handling the postgrad. They function with collaboration, have authority over the programs, and ensure the compliance. Now, this has a lot to maintain. The quality of the work, who judges it, the commitment, and also the support that they get from the hospital. Sometimes the leader in the academic affairs doesn't have any influence on the programs by virtue of the Saudi Commission treatment of the programs or by his higher-ups within the department, i.e. his authority over the trainees themselves within medical departments. Now, reality check here, academic affairs usually handle those roles. The Saudi Commission has empowered the position of the academic affairs in the last few years, and some issues relative to the role of the program directors remain vague with disruption of information flow. What I mean by that, program directors, sometimes they are confused. They are not sure. Are they really reporting to the Saudi Commission or they're reporting to the academic affairs? Also, the flow of information from the Saudi Commission to the academic affairs sometimes is disrupted. Sometimes program directors, they have the data and they don't support their position in the academic affairs. I think for the training process itself to be completed, you need all these things to be sorted out and the flow of data has to be open to give a chance for the person who's taking care of the operation itself to give it a good go and be responsible for the output. Again, here we talk about the institutional educational committees. As you can see, the functions are very clear. Elected residents should be part of it. Now, I'm not sure how many committees in the country now have residents, and if they have residents, are they really elected or appointed? Okay. The reality check here for the educational committee, we're talking about members' commitment. Are they really committed? The members' enthusiasm and involvement. Some of the program directors are not really that enthusiastic, you know. Member selection, who's selecting them? Is it the department or academic affairs? There is usually a dispute. And also the members' benefits. Some people, they look for benefits from these roles and they are not available in some hospitals. And the trainees' role, as we mentioned. That also takes us more about the educational committee to ensure the proper educational environment. Trouble is, who's bringing the data here about the intimidation and the abuse? We've talking about, you know, the surface versus training. Who's monitoring that? Is the program director is the only source of that data, or the chairman of the department, or the Saudi Commission? Again, they ensure adequate supervision and protect patient, consultants, and trainee. Again, we need to see data on that. Again, the educational committee will be to ensure the programs teach and assist residents' competencies and ensure adequate opportunities for the faculty department. Now, the quality of the work of this committee, to me, dictates the position of that institution on the training national arena. If you have a strong committee, their productivity will be better and their quality of trainees will be better, and that can be monitored by the Saudi Commission. Now, I'm just going to take you over King Faisal, and I have a reason for talking about it. In '83, they started with a few programs. The hospital was a service-based, but after a few years, they realized that they have to train. In '83, no formal programs, but they ended up starting with internal medicine and pediatrics. Arab board and other programs were then encountered. In 85, 4 major residency programs were established with all the formal structure. In 86, we got the approval of the Arab board for the 4 programs plus dentistry and neurosciences. In 92, the Saudi Commission was founded and all the programs went under its umbrella. Now, currently, we have 23 residency programs and 67 fellowship programs. And these are just numbers for you to look at about the number of the trainees. And this is just to give you an idea how are we growing over the years with regarding to the medical education with the number of residents and fellows. This is again numbers for on-board residents, whether they are sponsored or from King Faisal. These are the numbers of the graduates. These are new enrollers. And these are the medical graduates in recent years. These histograms and numbers are just telling you how complex is the system. You're really dealing with a lot of stakeholders, many angles, trainees, trainers, organization, administrators. So you really need a major organization and processes to run that system. If we go over the B standards, you will find that I'm not going to take you over them one by one, but you can see the program directors are the most important part of it, and I won't go beyond that after the presentation before me. Residency Program Committee is very important. Trouble is, the department sometimes has major effect on those, and that may tip the balance between service and training. The Program Directors Committee and Subcommittee plan, organize and supervise the training. We need to know the role of the department in the training itself and the role of the academic affairs, and it has to be really clear for both so they can work in harmony. The B1 administrative structure, this is again all mainly organization and resources. The goals and objectives has to be really clear to both trainees and trainers. We all know about the new Saudi Commission curricula developed in the last 2 years. The special objectives has to be really clear, but how diligent are we with them? I.e. the resident, do they really know what are their objectives from training? And so on. Keep going. Now, the structure of the organization, rotations, mandatory, elective to fulfill education requirements. Now, the program in a document and to have it graded supervision over the levels and to have a service responsibilities. This is a major concern. Sometimes residents are not well supervised, and some junior residents may do senior residents roles due to service needs. The structure and organization, the equality among residents, meet objectives. You can see these are all nice statements, but think of it when you are running these programs, how can you collect the data and ensure the quality of these guidelines? The collaboration with other programs, we have to have an actual capacity versus on-paper capacity. Sometimes programs are asking for expansions, but they may not have enough trainers or even patients to fulfill their requirements. Again, the resources, is it really efficient for the tasks? This is always negotiable, but the program director, I think, plays a major role in talking to on the higher-ups about these needs. Resources are an endless issue between academic affairs and program directors, and it has to be always quantified in order to ensure the goals. And just keep going here. Clinical and academic, scholarly center or program. Contents of the program must be appropriate to prepare residents to fulfill training objectives. I think, as you can see, these are the CAN-MED components. The problem is most of our programs are concentrating on the medical expert one, because we are always believing that they at least have to be a competent physicians. But the other ones are really important, because without that, you won't be able to maintain the program, because those residents or fellows now will be running these programs in the future. Again, health advocate, like for health advocacy at King Faisal 4 years ago, we adopted an idea, and we wanted to do it, to have an advocacy clinics. Till today, we are unable to open them. We have the idea, and we ended up funneling our residents within activities in societies and in some individuals in the hospital with the patient relation and social workers in order to fulfill this need. A scholar, again, from teaching, from research, and professional. Now, the assessment of resident performance, this is very important, but the feedback from the trainees is always lacking with these appraisal mechanisms. Yes, they are there on the papers, but we are not sure about the quality really, because the residents sometimes have to relent to what the consultant in that service or the HIT section agree with. So how to improve? There are many aspects. For the trainee before that is the trainee empowerment. Trainee empowerment, they have to be aware of their goals and objectives, open door policy between them and program director and academic affairs and the Saudi Commission, awareness of the rules and regulations, active committee involvement, empower sheriff resident post and residency retreats. These are very, very important. Residents, when they are on these non-official meetings, they reveal more and they become really part of your processes. Now, faculty empowerment, they have to be developed, incentives, and they share the decision-making process with them and to involve them also in the faculty retreats. The program director, program committee empowerment, suffice to say, what I said about the committee and what my colleague just said is enough. Program director has to have the full authority in the institution or you won't be able to deliver any training goals. Educational committee empowerment, transparent conduct and activity, empowerment of its position and the source of most decisions. Academic affairs empowerment, there has to be data available from the Saudi Commission to academic affairs so they will be able to direct their programs, and they have to be involved in the regulations and policies and program curricular revisions. Internal reviews, very, very important with the help of Saudi Commission. And also we encourage innovation because not every institution can really meet the standards. But there has to be a way to do it within the institution by innovation. And I think Saudi Commission should take the lead in that because we are running out of positions now. We need more positions and we lack it. If we are going to be stingent with the standard itself, we may not have enough. So we really have to be innovative in how to deliver these standards. Others to share success stories among programs, continued development, goal-specific task forces, involvement of and responsiveness to other institutions, sectors, and individuals. I think the final word is commitment. If an institution is committed to training, they will do it. But the commitment goes all the way from their CEO or whoever is that person, all the way down to the trainees and below that. Thank you so much, and I hope that covered what the goal is.
شكرا للدكتور سعود وندعو رؤوس الجلسة لمناقشة الجلسة.
Thank you, Dr. Saud. If you allow me, I have a question. What do you think from your long experience, the most probably deficient, circle of the processes where it needs really so much of improvement?
And unfortunately, there are a lot of areas that has to be improved. And I'm not saying really that's in certain institutions or others. No. Every institution will have something to improve. But I think we should really concentrate on the key to have a success story in each program. And I think the program director is the most important player in the game. If you have an enthusiastic, good program director, your training will be good, and you will have most of the objectives attained.
Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ismail Khatri. I'm part of neurology residency.
If you can stand up, thank you.
My name is Ismail Khatri. I'm part of neurology residency program. So apart from program director, if the rest of the faculty is not participating as much as you would expect, how can you enforce their participation in making it happen? For example, one of the problems I see is unjustified evaluations, or in other words, not appropriate or dishonest evaluation. Everybody gets 100% or above expectation in their evaluation, and you see that the resident is not
I'm very
performing.
sorry. Can you please stop? There is a lot of echo here. I can't really hear the question.
Dr. Saud, he's asking that how to empower the rest of the faculty or staff who is really not enthusiastic for teaching the resident, how to buy in those people, and what is the methodology of doing that? Is that your question? Yes.
Well, this is a constant issue here, but you really have to have a program director that's on the same page with the chairman of the department. We have to go for the chairman meetings and talk to them about this kind of commitment. And we have to help them to put KPIs to monitor their staff. And usually the program director is the one who monitors this process. I am not saying that you will be able to attain 100% on that game. But if you can really make their role clear and the chairman of that department supportive, I think you will be able to get their full cooperation there. If it is only left for their behaviors, we will get nothing out of the training. But one of the things that we used also in King Faisal, which we haven't done yet, but we really throw it on the table, that consultants, service ones, like we call them faculty, are not entitled for trainees unless they teach them. So if a consultant is showing any misbehavior or is not training, we started pulling now some strings about pulling away the trainees from their service.
Is there any question from the female side? Just to be fair. No? Okay.
It's a comment, Umar. It's a comment, it's not a question. Thank you, Dr. Saud. This is very nice, the institutional standards.
If you stand to hear you, it's better. Yes,
institutional standards. However, I think I'm proud of my ministry, Ministry of Health, though the service ministry comprises almost 60% of the training for Saudi Council. However, and I think it needs governance of academic affairs in the regions. And I think there are a lot of variabilities in Ministry of Health programs. This is just a comment rather than a question.
لا
واضح ما هو واضح.
لا ما هو واضح مرة. في ايكوز كثير.
المشكلة في variability في دكتور سعود في standards of the program in the Ministry of Health. Because there is no proper academic affairs in the health region.
Question is about the Ministry of Health program.
Yes, and I think the Saudi Council and the other institution like your institute, respected institution, other institutions should help the ministry to build a strong academic affairs.
Yeah.
Because 60% of our Saudi Council programs in the Ministry of Health.
Yeah. I agree with you, and I will give you another number. I think it's, despite the fact that Ministry of Health covers more than 85 of the services, and their hospitals are all over the place, I think it's less than 50% of those centers are accredited, isn't it, Sam? And this is a major issue. I know the Saudi Commission have been trying for years to activate programs in there, and they've innovated things about putting only programs, not just even an institution, trying to help them. But to be honest with you, I think the drive has to come from the Ministry of Health itself. And if you ask me now, what is the most important factor that's going to start the training in these centers? It will be going back to the roots. The roots dictates that there is a training by apprentice. There has to be a consultant training a resident. If you start at least from that part and try to concentrate and be really realistic of the goals of the training, we cannot go there to a hospital and Ministry of Health in the periphery where they lack a lot of services and throw at them these standards and say you have to comply and we will come back in 6 months and get it. You will never get it. But if we go there and say we need a competent consultant, we need a competent administrator, and then we will start the training, then build on those successes, I think we will get there. I mean, we talked about it in the Saudi Commission years ago, how to introduce research for medical trainees. That was a major task. But when we really did our preliminary data, we stopped because we could not go and encourage research in a place that barely can train them to be medical experts. We really have to be very, very realistic when it comes to our goals at this stage. We are 25 years old, so we really have to behave like 25 years old because we need a lot of training posts now, and if we really insist on having these standards done in its entirety, I don't think we're going to be able to attain our goals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saud. I think we are behind a little bit. Thank you so much.
انتهت الجلسة السادسة. أما الآن نبدأ الجلسة السابعة، فليتفضل الدكتور عارف العريبي مشكورا.
Definitely, I don't want to have, talk about his, biography. So he was introduced in the morning. So he will start since we are behind the schedule. Thank you so much.
شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم مرة ثانية. This time I'll talk about the thing that I understand the most. This is something I've done for a few years, so I hope by sharing my experience you will gain some tips and some points that you can take home. Now it's the same problem from the morning. So trying to address the residency program committee as a part of the success of the entire program. So if you saw the presentation this morning about the stakeholders, the RPC, or Residency Program Committee, is the headquarters. This is where the detailed work is done. So in my opinion, it has to succeed. There is no room for failure here. You can, you can justify mistakes and negative aspects of medical training, but you can't justify the negative side or major shortage in the RBC's work. So why, did I skip another slide or no? Anyway, so I'll just take this slide. So why PA, this is not the, this is not the presentation. That's for program administrators. So yeah. So there's another presentation. I think I confused everyone. I'm presenting about 5 presentations this morning. We can talk a little bit about the residency program committees. If you remember the structure this morning where we said the university is the core stakeholder when it comes to residency program training, and there are 3 other stakeholders. One of them is the RPC, which is the Residency Program Committee, and then the faculty and the residents. So you do report to the university, and you do report to your chair and department. And there are a lot of resources out there on how to run the committee successfully, and on how you communicate with the members. And this is what I wanted to give you today, some hints about how you do the work with less trouble and less stress, because I think it was mentioned by Dr. Riyad and Dr. Saud, the program director, especially the program director, is a very stressful job. We call it a thankless job. You can't satisfy everyone. Are we ready for the presentation or no? Can I use my laptop or no? I have the presentation on my laptop, so you have it? Sorry for the inconvenience. I just remembered one thing I can talk to you about my experience when, everybody considers the Canadian training system as one of the best, and it does graduate a lot of good educators and physicians. However, when we start planning for the CBD, the competence by design, we were already overwhelmed with the amount of work. I mean, we were running full speed. The committee was barely holding things together for the traditional cohort, right? So we're not talking about CBD, and now CBD is a major change. And one of the things that we've done in our program, and I found it very useful, and I'll be happy to share it with you, is something if you're coming up with a big change, think of introducing more subcommittees, and I'll show you one of the slides that the value of the subcommittees and engage people in the work. So the educators, the residents. There was one question in the first talk about whether or not you allow residents to do some of the admin work during the RPCs. I wouldn't do it in the RPC, in the Resident Program Committee meeting, because the residents by default are very protected, but I would engage them in the subcommittees. So if I have a curriculum subcommittee, I'd like them, especially those who are interested in education, I'd like them to be involved in designing curriculums and reviewing goals and objectives. It's a good learning experience. And this also will provide other goals for the committee. And it didn't stop on the subcommittees. The Royal College then asked us to introduce a new committee. Probably you heard about it. It's called CC, or Competence Committee. It's for the CBD cohort. Right now we have two groups. We have two cohorts right now. I think that's the one. Thank you. That's just made the training very complex, and I'll show you. So I will ignore the time here, okay? So our objectives, I'm going to show you about how to set up a residency program committee, how to run the meetings within the committee, the communications within the committee. They will talk about the program director as the committee leader. I think last two talks you heard a lot about the program director, and I agree with Dr. Saoud about he's the main, or she is the main runner. And if you don't choose carefully, the program director, things will fall apart. And then tips based on my experience and some of the literature, how to run things. So we'll talk about the structure. So in general, whenever you start a committee, and specifically for education, you have to ask yourself a few questions. Number one, what do I need the committee to do? This question has to be very clear to you. There should be very clear expectations and goal. You can't just start committee because you want to start a committee there. The second is, what sort of structure is needed for the new committee? This question is specifically on having global picture. So which representations you need? Do you need representations from your site coordinators, from research? Do you need an associate? Do you want your chair to be it? And so on. So it has to be very clear. The second, to whom should the committee report? And that also has to be very clear. And the answer of those questions will go into your terms of reference. And we'll talk about terms of reference. And whom should I select the chair of the committee? Again, I repeat, this is your key point. Choose the right person who is flexible, enthusiastic, can sacrifice time, and aiming high, creative. It's really important to choose your leader. And the other one, the last question was, who should I involve from all those stakeholders? So if you need a research representative or a site coordinator, choose people according to their personalities and interests. And again, because you're building structure, somebody will come and assess you and see if you're fit to train and whether or not they will accredit you. So whenever you start the committee, you have to meet the requirements. So I'm going to give you one example here, or maybe two, about how the standards will control the structure. So one of them is the committee should include a representative from each participating site, which means by default, if I have in London, I have 3 sites, so I have 3 representatives on each site. And this way, when they review me, I met the standard B1.2.1. Another standard is there should be representation from the residents. So you have to have residents in the committee. It's not an option. At least one. I do have 3. So I have a PGY4 who's the chief. I have a senior representative from the PGY3. And I have a junior representative from the PGY2. And now because we're starting CBD, we're thinking of introducing a CBD residents because completely different training structure. And again, choose carefully, balance the group. So you don't want all people are juniors. You don't want, you know, even when it comes to personality, you need to balance the group. This will make your life easier throughout the year when you meet with them. So you need some people who have the experience, the wisdom, who can control tense meetings sometimes, and you need the mix. You need the juniors who you can mentor, you can have them leaders in the future, and they learn from each other. And have a strong representation from residents. Remember, you have 3 in a committee of average of 10 to 14, so they're overnumbered, so you have to support them, and you have to make their voices very strong. I'm going to give you an example of a structure of committee. This is my committee that we did 4 years ago, and we continued to change it according to our needs. So that's by default me, a program director, and I have representations from these groups. I have the associate program director. I have a program administrator who's not a physician. I have residents. I have simulation. I have site representatives. I have fellowship coordinator. I have my chair chief sits in the committee and research, and we introduced the CBD lead, somebody who looks after the CBD group, okay? There are 2 people are non-voting members because one of them, I personally didn't want them to vote, like chair chief. This is not their job to vote there, but you can have everybody vote, or you can decide who shouldn't vote according to your terms of reference. And I report to my associate dean of postgraduate medical education and my chair chief. So you can tell why we made him non-voting member, because eventually we're reporting to him as well. Now, when we started CBD, we thought that there's a lot of work coming, and there would be a lot of changes. So 4 or about 5 years ago, we started these subcommittees, and I can say now this is probably the biggest decision I made, and this is the biggest decision we found that made a huge difference in our department for many reasons. So we had evaluation subcommittees, and people who are aware of the CBD is all about assessments. It's all about assessments. And we needed a specific group who looks after the assessment, change the culture, and the academic mentoring subcommittee, again, there's a rule in the CBD called academic advisors. So when they came up with the advisors, we were ready. We have the academic mentoring, people advising a specific number of residents and reporting back to the residency program committee. The curriculum subcommittee, we have a very complex academic half day, 2 days, almost 54 speakers in a year, and about, I think, 150 lectures. And it's a dynamic, it changes, so we needed a specific group to run the committee. We have a QI. Since we're making changes, we have no idea if these changes are right. We don't. We're doing CBD the first time ever in the world. We don't know, and we were the first group in 100 years to start competency-based medical education in Canada. So we wanted to make sure there would be no interference between the 2 groups, the traditional and the CBD group, and they study the changes and report back to us, and we make changes as we go, and that was very valuable. And I was so happy when I would say 50% of the programs in Canada, they're using our materials and our website. We created a special website for CBD based on the QI subcommittee feedback that this is what people need. They need easy access to information, and we created a website, and it was very easy to do nowadays with the free resources. Selection subcommittee just for the selection. And the Royal College wants the Competence Committee, which has completely different rule. The Royal College asked us not to chair it. So program director should not chair the Competence Committee. There should be somebody else. And in my Competence Committee, I sit there. I'm non-voting member, not even a voting member. So that's another rule there. And then we still have the CBD working group. That's a few groups of educators. They meet and they evaluate the changes and they come up with the change as we go. And this probably will continue for 3-4 years. And residents, don't choose your residents. Let them select the residents, your residents group, because eventually they will report to them. They have to feel comfortable with their choice, and they are the link between you and the residents. And in terms of, back to the question of using the residents, this is how I would use them. By providing guidance, consider them as a future investment. This is very unique and rare opportunity for residents to learn and be within the circle and learn the details of medical education. And it can be very stressful. I have a chief resident, and whenever there's a question that I don't have an answer, I do go to them and ask them. And they feel that they're valuable, they're part of the change, especially if I want to make a change that will upset the residents, to be honest. And there are a lot of decisions that the program director make, or the residency program committee, that upsets the residents. So involve the residents, have them on your side. It's a nice way to sell things. I'm pushing, trust me. And another benefit from the subcommittees is we filled the subcommittees with residents and faculty. By this way, people started to be engaged in the decision making, and what I described as shaking the ground, that there's something coming to you in 3 years. That was 2014, that you will do more, because the faculty in Canada, they're not paid to teach. So they're doing this, and they're tired. They're working all day in the OR for anesthesia, and now you're asking them to do more. So you have to have them, and you can't lose the trainer, because that's one of your main stakeholders. So by putting them in the subcommittees, they start talking about it, they get involved in decision making, and sending information. At least now you prepare them mentally about the upcoming change. Keep your group together. That's very tense, and the people you work with are the most busy group in your department or program. So try to empower them and listen to them, and try to always keep them ahead of you. If you feel somebody is creative, enthusiastic, don't let them down. Unless they're doing something really risky, help them. And you don't have to claim their work, or even not under the name of the RPC. Maybe just introduce them to the group with their great work individually. You can nominate them for awards. We just had I nominated my CBD lead, and just had the award for the Canadian innovations based on their work on the website. And so they feel rewarded, and this person now is taking more work voluntarily, just by feeling appreciated. But hold them accountable. Doesn't mean that you get things loose. So you have to have terms of reference, indicates the jobs. If you do action items in the minutes, you have to mention a name. Who will look after this action item? And then the next meeting, you have to review it. People should close the loop when it comes to communication. And you have to have balance. Some of your members, they are friends. And when it comes to work, you have to have a balanced approach between work and friendship. I'm really struggling with this. So again, send them for workshops, support them, don't skip them as representative. If you have a site coordinator doing the job and somebody jumped them or skipped them and they talk to you directly, they have to go back to the right channel. And also you will create clear channels for communications this way. Refresh your committees after a few years. You should bring new people, including yourself. So the average life for a program director in Canada is about 4 to 6 years. And actually, as of this month, I'm not a program director because I finished my 4.5 years now. And it's a busy job. So terms of reference, I'm going to speak about terms of reference. There is no magic format. If you go on the internet, Google, you will find a lot of material, but there are basic principles. So you have to have a background in the terms of reference. You have to have the membership, indicate clearly who are the members, and the expected deliverables from the committee and from each individual, the timeline and reporting, and definition of the quorum. What do you need? 50%, 60%? That should be very clear in your terms of reference, because in accreditation, they have to review them. And when they review your minutes, if they don't match, you're in trouble. And review them as you go, because the medical education is a changing process. The Royal College also accreditation requirements is a changing process, so you have to change things around. And make them available online. So you can send them regularly. Again, use the standard accreditation to meet the requirements. Again, there was one of them is that they have to meet regularly, for example. This is one of the Royal College accreditation requirements. So you have to write in the terms of reference that meetings should happen at least 4 times a year. The second is the standard for the standard of the accreditation. You have to prove. You can communicate with people, with your faculty, with your university about decisions, but you have to document. My advice, always document your communications, because there are things to do, and there are things that you show that you're doing them to the Royal College. That's the whole thing about accreditation. You have to show people what you do. And even if you communicated and there is no proof, nobody will support you. Again, identify your non-voting members. Running your committee. So scheduling, it's easier in a busy group to make it fixed so everybody knows. And at certain times, this time people, they feel like that every month they're meeting, and there is something like home for them to come and meet together and discuss things. Pay attention to the department meetings, because most likely your members are members of other committees. So have a shared calendar, or try to organize them in a convenient way, because you need them physically attended if possible. If not, they can call in or use video conference. Respect time. Try not to make meetings very long, and then consider special timings during the year. So I try to avoid any RPC meeting during CARMS, during the selection, during the accreditation or the exams period, because people are very busy. So have like a year map, and then squeeze in the meetings. Developing the agenda. Do not overload the agenda. Make it simple. This is an easy one. And put the important items first, because people can get tired. People will leave later. At the end of the day, most likely, at least for us in Canada, that's why we usually meet after 5. And I usually give them room at the beginning if there is something urgent they would like to discuss. It has to be minuted that we added this based on special circumstances. And then short reports. I have each member report on behalf of their group, site representation, research, simulation. They report, I don't give them more than 5 minutes unless there is something big that everybody wants to discuss. And residents, you have to give them time. As most likely it will be you who will control how much contribution the residents will provide to the committee. And again, if you have a really big things happening, try to do work before, if you can, before the meetings if you can, and then to make the meeting very short. Provide people with materials, discuss with some of the stakeholders of the issue, and send the agenda in advance. Don't send it the night before. People will not read it anyway because they feel that it will not change anything. And just try to avoid sending other materials. Managing the meeting, preparation is critical. Try to give yourself some time, review things, review the action items, call people, see what happened since your last meeting. Then the subcommittee chair, you can invite people outside the committee to report, but my advice is excuse them after they finish. They shouldn't sit there all the time. One of the most difficult tasks you'll have is to balance the group, and that's probably a little bit hard. There'll be some vocal people and the members, they can dominate the discussions. So this is another personal skill, that how you make sure that everybody gets their share. Managing the meeting still, again, be creative, encourage people to come up with the new ideas and listen to them. Probably not all of those ideas are practical, not all of ideas you will agree on, but even one idea in a year can make a huge difference. And residents, again, if anybody can't attend, you can be a little bit more flexible and always make sure that it's a respectful, collegial discussion. And this is the same thing, that discuss things before. Just discuss important things before the meeting. In accreditation, there's one thing you have to show the accreditation group that you're producing items that actually improves the program. And have a retreat. This is something I've used, and a lot of program directors, they use to regroup, bring everybody. It's a whole day session where everybody reports their achievements, their future plans, their challenges, and everybody listens to each other, all the stakeholders, and then you come up with a plan for 1 or 2 years. Making decisions, it's important decision making to station proceed by some key steps. So again, I don't want to repeat those. Stakeholders must be informed about the issue, and you have to have a quorum, I think, at the end to make most of the decisions. Not all decisions need to be voted on. This is the same thing. I'm speeding up a little bit, but I think they're the same things we talked about. The meeting minutes, they're the proof of the meetings, so you have to review them. And the accreditation committee, some of them, they go in details and actually read the minutes, which is not advisable, but some people do that. So whatever is written can be seen by your university, your chair, and your accreditation group. There is no magic format. Do it the way you like. Don't take minutes yourself, and that's back to one of the questions I heard. So ask one of the faculties to do it if you don't have a program administrator, somebody else. But if you're leading the meeting, don't do the minutes. It's a big distractor. And try to make it short, 1 or 2 pages. People nowadays tend not to read long emails or long documents, so make it very short. Focus on decisions, review action items, and consider circulating the minutes in very timely matters. Some people, they share them with the faculty in the website or send them in emails, but pay attention to the confidential discussions. Take them out of the minutes. I have 2 copies of the minutes. One goes to the faculty members of the RBC. The other one goes everywhere. So always pay attention to the confidential items. I'm going to skip the program director because I saw the 2 lectures in the morning, and they actually mentioned all of these things here. So again, it's a thankless job. It's a very important job. You will learn a lot. I can see myself 4 years ago, and now there are tons of information I learned. It's very rewarding. So it's one thing I would mention, it's not a dictatorship, it's a directorship. So you have to have the difference, and that's again, lots of room for creativity. People will do more if they're part of the change. Be fair to all, listen, and engage your faculty as we talked. Okay, we have a rewarding system in our department, so we have 90 consultants. We choose the top 20%, we send them letters, and this stays in their CVs, it helps them with the promotions. The bottom 10%, the chair, chief, and myself, we sit with them, and we warn them, we help them by providing workshops and see why they're in the bottom 10%. So keep them close, listen to them. They can be very helpful. Okay, and again, document, pay attention how many emails and phone calls you do, and not all issues to be communicated to RPC, and respond in time for serious matters. Don't let them stand there for a few days, because things can get worse, especially in big issues between faculty and residents. Maintain confidentiality. It's too much work. Share resources. We have a group of program directors in the country, and if I have a question or I need any document, they share it with me and I share it with them. If I need terms of reference, if I need an evaluation form, and then I just share it with them. Delegate tasks, don't do all the work, and time management if there is no enough time. I think I'm almost there, I hope so. This presentation doesn't want to end. And provide feedback to your committees about their performance. And you're part of a bigger picture, okay? You're not alone, you have the clinical and research side, and the summary. So again, it's the same thing about program directors, so I'm not going to mention. Collaborate with all the parties. Keep the RBC updated, follow up on the issues. It's just a summary of what I said. And don't waste time, show resources, and encourage all members to participate and review. Again, this is about the faculty. Yeah, and again, so meetings and make sure that everything is fine. And that's just a summary of what we talked about. So I don't think you're missing anything here by skipping these ones. I will make sure that there isn't an important subject that you're not hearing. This is a good book. I'm not advertising for the Royal College, but this is a book I used, and it's online. It's probably the cheapest book when it comes to program director guide in the internet, and you will see most of the things I talked about, they're from this book, okay? And you find a lot of good materials there. So that's my reference, and thank you very much.
شكرا للدكتور عارف العريبي، وندعو رؤساء الجلسة لمناقشة الجلسة.
Thank you, Dr. Arif. I might probably ask a question. You talk a lot about the CBD, but you never outline at least what is the most appealing, part of this CBD approach. If you can, just a few words, your experience about it.
It's a good question, and it can take us a few hours to explain the CBD. I do have presentations ready, but basically, we're designing a hybrid competency-based medical education, which means it's not time limited, it's not time free. We use time as a resource. So you heard now with the current system, people has to pass certain rotations according to the training requirements that they have to do specific months of specific rotations. They have to pass them, and then at the end they go and sit the Royal College exam and they graduate. But now, no, there's another thing called, or functional unit called EPA. I don't know how many of you heard about it. about the EPA. Have you heard about EPAs? Raise hands, anybody? So does it look like? This is what you will deal with in the future. This is the future of the medical education. EPA is the entrustable professional activity. Those are tasks that you entrust the trainee to do in your specialty. So we identified somewhere around 86 EPAs in anesthesia, and these are the ones they have to show us that they can pass them. 86. We use the time to achieve those EPAs. We don't need an end rotation evaluation. I don't care. If this EPA said people will be able to preoperatively assess patients for complex procedures, okay, this is more for the pre-admit clinic. I'll send them to the pre-admit clinic to do the EPA. So that's one of the changes. So this created a lot of challenge because we don't have a rotation. So we have to come up with our own rotations. And then the assessments. So the assessment, they were made easier actually. The Royal College came up with the e-portfolio, electronic e-portfolio, and supplied it with all of the assessments. But I don't want to overwhelm you. I have a lot of things to talk about. It's very interesting, it's very fascinating. I have to be honest, I was a little bit suspicious when we started the project, but now I'm very supportive of the CBD. And I see the PGY1s who are CBD now, they're way ahead of any other PGY1 we've seen before. That's just my observation. I don't have any evidence, just my own observation is based on their clinical performance.
Thank you so much.
It's an excellent question. I'll try to answer, but I may not satisfy your question very well. But this is very complex. It comes down to the culture that were created in that specific country that don't expect to be paid to be an academic staff. Okay, you're honored to be. We give you the associate professor or the assistant professor or full professor, and you have to do more to convince us to be up to that level. So by default, every new faculty is an assistant professor, and our universities, they're expected to be promoted to associate professor in 7 years, and it's really hard. The requirements are really hard. So I have two types of players when it comes to the faculty. One is the enthusiastic, the people who are really wants to do things. The other one who just want to get promoted. So that's why I choose carefully. If I need the person who is interested in education, or I need the person who just wants to be promoted. So it's driven by their own, I would say, goals in the future, where they want to sit. So, and the program director, same thing. It's very busy. You work after hours. You work weekends. You're still a clinician. I work in the OR. There are a lot of long days from 7 to 6 p.m. I'm still doing it. I think it's rewarding. I like it. Yeah.
So how can you advise us now? I'm sorry to say that culture is not very strong here. How can you advise inside? Yes.
For some reason, the sound here is really bad.
Okay. Is it
it's good.
How can you this culture is not very strong here. I'm sorry to say that. I'm ashamed to say that actually, but this is a fact. What would your advice be to entice program directors or to kind of enhance or to enforce this kind of structure or this network to work?
So I hope I heard you correctly. You're asking that this session could be better if we had hands-on workshop?
No,
okay.
His question actually, he was saying that because of our culture, he is not similar to the Canadian, driven culture for, the promotion from the assistant to the, and so on. Can we try another, drive which is suitable for our culture to enhance the engagement of the program directors and other who involved in the academics?
Okay, now I think I understand is how to encourage people and make this job very attractive.
In our culture.
In our culture.
Yeah.
Again, if you remember this morning when I said, I'm going to give you information, you are the one who knows the gaps, you know the landscape, you can't copy and paste what exists in the world. Take what's applicable to you. You know the issues that you deal with and come up with a way that you can reward them. So one of the different things we do within our department that probably most Canadian departments don't do, we have something called PBR, Point-Based Ruminations, okay? We do have a small budget in our department, and believe it or not, it comes from the contribution of the clinical earnings from the consultant, 90 consultants. Everybody contributes to 1% of their income toward education in our departments. So I have a budget, it's not a secret, it's around $300,000 a year, and if teachers in the top 20%, they get points. If you chair a conference, you get a point. If you publish a paper, you get a point, and then it's converted in money. So that's one way, but it's unique. I didn't want to mention because it's not applicable to all programs. It's very hard knowing some of the challenges you face here. لملتقى, in my side, if I see it, it's a little bit hard. So, but you can take whatever is applicable and apply it to your culture.
Not always money. Money can be probably a temporary incentive, but how would you overlook this? And program directors apparently seem to be the major cornerstone of all trainings, from what we've been hearing so far. So how can you drive program directors and make them more engaged and more active in our culture?
Thank you so much, Dr. Salah. I don't know how much time we have remaining.
Well, you have a few minutes, no problem.
Okay. I think it's really a national interest to integrate all the program directors, like similar to the model in the Canadian system, for example. Definitely, when Dr. Arif was speaking about engaging the team, I was saying, really, this is the secret ingredient we are looking for here. And I think this is what Dr. Salah is talking about, how we can achieve this secret ingredient. I think it's basically a needs assessment process where we have really to find the best fit of the solution to our environment, exactly the way Dr. Arif mentioned right now. In my humble experience as a graduate of the national program who has been through supervising committees, ending up with the post of executive training director in the commission, I think there is really solutions. Definitely one of them is just to enable program director to do what they are supposed to do with the support. I think we have either program director who has been in this position without clarity in what is their clear role to do, which might be a little bit variable based on the institution, specialty, or the healthcare system they function with. And we have really such a matrix, complex system in the kingdom. On the other hand, I think till recently we didn't have enough support, either from the commission or from the postgraduate departments in the program directors' institutions. I think we are underutilizing the academic affairs and postgraduate deanships in the centers in the kingdom. There has been some centrality in the deal of sharing the responsibility and accountability toward the training. I think the commission with this forum, with this strategy, taking a starting point from the accreditation to start with clear definition of the process, expectations. Definitely we have so many steps to go through. We have to define more policies which is relevant to the environment. We have to enable people. I think one part is the incentives to be provided to people. I don't think it's the only solutions. Many people, they might talk about getting incentives in the system. I think what motivates most of us here to be educationists or educators is what we feel tangible outcomes toward the postgraduate training. It's the motivation, it's the patient impact we see as a healthcare practitioner. I think there is excellent team members across the kingdom. They are hidden everywhere. Every day we meet, me and Dr. Ziad and others from the commission, in such forums that there is huge resources in the kingdom. We just need to reach them, enable them, open the door for them to contribute to this achievement. I think there is part need to be done by the commission. I hope we are not late, but definitely we are in the right direction with the new regulations and changes in the restructure in the commission. So I think there is multi-source solutions. We are hoping that we will be all working together to reach that secret ingredient.
I mean, it seems that clearly that you understand the environment and you came up with solutions that may not be applicable in Canada, but they're applicable specifically here to this environment. And that's the way it goes. There isn't a magic format anywhere. So if you look at the American, the British, the Canadian, everybody thinks different than the other. So as long as you satisfy your needs and goals. So if you think the program, this action will help the program director without compromising the big picture, just go for it, do it. One thing I found that very valuable is the resident's voice, the trainee's voice, their evaluations for the faculty. And people fear of the bad evaluations when it comes to, especially the faculty. And because we have very strong process in place, if it goes to the university, they won't get promoted. People will talk about with them about how they improve, and it may end their appointments, university appointment. But again, you know the environment better than anybody else. So.
Okay. I think we probably conclude, if you allow me, because we have... yes?
If you allow me. Just a quick comment. I think incentives do not necessarily have to be financial incentives. I think it's probably worth it to go and look at those programs that don't have the support, and yet there are people who spend a lot of time and effort working as program directors for extended periods of time, and ask them, what makes you do what you're doing? And I think in those answers we will find, we will have more insight on what incentivizes people in our society, and maybe we can capitalize on that, because we talk a lot about the financial incentive. But is it the financial incentive that will solve the problem? We don't really know. I think there are people who don't consider this as a major component. Others do. We really need to know what are the priorities for the people who have dedicated themselves to training, and there are many great examples. And I think many in this room are among those groups. So I think a survey as a startup might be a good starting point in this. So this is just a suggestion that came up during this discussion.
Do we have a minute for a comment, please? I think this is a very important issue from a strategic point of view. I think if we manage to integrate the medical education process with the clinical service provision in order to meet the outcome of providing a value health care system, that will be probably a very important dragging force for administration. If you remember the table that has been displayed this morning, one of the biggest deficiencies, if we consider those deficiencies, are the administrative and the resources. So if we manage to drag the administration to be integrating the medical education as part of the clinical service provision to make sure that the outcome of the whole training process will meet the value healthcare of the population, I think that will be a very good driving force as an incentive for our training process.
It was very fruitful discussion and comments, and I think by this we conclude our afternoon session. Thank you so much, Dr. Arif, for this wonderful presentation.
نشكر الدكتور عارف العريبي. أما الآن فاصل لأداء صلاة العصر ونعود لاستكمال جلسات الملتقى.
طيب, it seems that the voiceover has done the job, so we'll pray for 10 minutes and come back. So we're going to come back for the program administrator workshop in the same venue here within 10 minutes. We'll pray and come back, inshallah.